Something you could never have predicted, never in a million years. It's a moment that leaves you asking, how did that even happen? Well, let me take you to a day that started like any other but turned into something truly unforgettable. Picture this: a food delivery, one that was supposed to be routine, a quick drop-off, just another stop in the long list of deliveries for the driver. But here's the twist: she delivered food to the wrong house. That's where this seemingly simple moment takes an unexpected turn. Now, you might be thinking, okay, a mistake, no big deal, right? But what happened next? Well, that's the part that will leave you stunned. Stick with me here because you're going to want to hear this entire story, and by the end, you'll be questioning everything you thought you knew about simple coincidences and fate. Now, before we dive deeper into what really unfolded, let's just take a second to consider this. We've all had those days when nothing goes as planned. Whether it's a missed bus, a misplaced wallet, or that moment when you realize you left your phone at home, small mistakes that don't seem like much at the time, but in hindsight, maybe they were a little more significant than we thought. But sometimes, just sometimes, those mistakes aren't mistakes at all. They might be the first steps toward something bigger, something magical. And if you're like most people, you're probably already thinking, wait, what do you mean by magical? I promise you, it's worth sticking around for. This is not just a story about a delivery gone wrong. Oh no, this is a story about the kind of event that changes the trajectory of someone's life. It's about chance encounters, unspoken connections, and the kind of serendipity that seems to happen when we least expect it. And trust me, you're going to want to see how it all plays out. Because let me tell you, this wasn't just a food delivery blunder, it was the beginning of something that would forever alter the lives of not just the delivery driver, but also the people at the wrong house. Now, I know you've probably seen your fair share of YouTube videos about crazy delivery stories, and maybe you've heard of some wild twists of fate, but this one is different. I'm not just talking about someone getting the wrong order. No, this is something much more profound. I want you to picture the moment when the food was dropped off at the wrong house. Was it awkward? Sure. But it was also the spark of something that would soon grow into something extraordinary. And if you stick with me, you'll find out just how extraordinary. This wasn't just a mix-up. This wasn't just an oops moment. This was the start of a journey, and I promise, by the end of this video, you're going to see just how deeply this one small act of mistake unraveled a chain of events that led to a series of experiences none of the people involved could have ever seen coming. Trust me, you'll be on the edge of your seat as you watch the mystery unfold. You see, life has this funny way of pulling us into stories we never saw coming, stories that at first seem unremarkable but then, somehow, end up changing everything. The thing is, when we think we've made a mistake, or when we think things have gone off track, that's when the universe is often just getting started. And the moment this delivery driver left that food at the wrong house, something magical was already set in motion. You're probably wondering what exactly that magic was, and I'm going to tell you, just wait for it. But I need you to stay with me here. This is one of those stories you have to hear to believe. I know you've clicked on this video because you're curious about how something as simple as delivering food could lead to something so unexpected. Now, let's rewind for a second. Picture yourself in the shoes of the delivery driver. She's just doing her job, working hard, trying to get through a busy day. It's nothing extraordinary, just a regular shift. She's probably thinking about the next delivery, or maybe wondering when her lunch break will come. But then, the mix-up happens. The food is delivered to the wrong house. And at first, it seems like nothing more than a small error, just another mistake that will be quickly forgotten. After all, who hasn't made a small mistake at work? But here's the twist: the people at the wrong house weren't upset. In fact, they welcomed her in. They invited her to sit down, chat, and soon, this simple delivery became the beginning of something neither party could have ever predicted. This is where it gets really interesting. Because when you bring people together who were never supposed to meet, when their paths cross by pure chance, incredible things can happen. That one little moment of mistake led to a series of conversations, a bond forming over something as trivial as a food order, and slowly, it became clear that this wasn't just an ordinary mix-up. No, this was something far more powerful than that. And as the day wore on, everyone involved began to realize that they were part of a story that went far beyond a food delivery. The connection that started with an innocent mistake grew into something profound, something that would impact them all in ways they couldn't have imagined. But here's the catch, I can't give it all away just yet. You'll have to stick around to find out what happens next, because trust me, it's more than you could ever expect. You're on the edge of your seat now, aren't you? Wondering what exactly happened when these strangers crossed paths. Was it fate? A sign? Or just one of those coincidences that can never really be explained? You're going to have to keep watching to get the full picture. Let's just say, by the end of this story, you'll see how one small mistake led to something truly magical, something that changed everyone involved forever. But here's where it gets even more intriguing. It's not just about what happens to the people in the story. It's about you, too. This story is about the twists and turns in life that we don't always understand, the moments that leave us wondering if there's more at play than we can see. So, if you've ever felt like life is full of random events, moments that seem like they don't make sense, well, this story will have you rethinking everything. Because sometimes, the wrong delivery to the wrong house at the right time can lead to something that's nothing short of magical. So, don't go anywhere. Keep watching, because the best part is still to come. You'll find out what happens when a simple mistake opens up a world of unexpected possibilities. And trust me, by the end of this video, you'll believe that magic really does happen when you least expect it. As the delivery driver, Emily had always considered herself someone who thrived in routine. Her life, though busy and at times overwhelming, followed a predictable pattern. She'd wake up early, grab her coffee from the same corner shop, and begin her shift with a quiet optimism, determined to make it through the day with as few bumps in the road as possible. The day in question had started no differently than any other. She was working for a popular food delivery service, hustling to meet the demands of a city that never stopped moving. It wasn't glamorous work, but it was honest, and it paid the bills. Emily didn't mind the long hours, the occasional rude customer, or even the confusing addresses. It was part of the grind. But that particular day, something felt off though, at the time, she couldn't quite put her finger on it. The morning had been unusually slow, leaving Emily with time to think. As she zipped through the quiet streets, her mind wandered to a conversation she'd had earlier in the week. She had just gone through a difficult breakup with someone she thought she'd be with forever. The emotional toll of it was still fresh, and even though she had tried to push through it, the weight of that relationship hung over her like a storm cloud. She hadn't told anyone about it, certainly not her friends or family. After all, how could she explain why something that had seemed so perfect fell apart so quickly? She had tried to distract herself with work, immersing herself in the simplicity of delivering food, hoping it would keep her from thinking about the heartache she couldn't shake. But as she pulled up to each house, dropped off each meal, she couldn't help but feel like there was something missing. Like the life she had planned for herself had slipped away just out of reach, and she wasn't sure how to get it back. That's when the mistake happened. Emily had just finished dropping off a delivery at a high-rise apartment building, and she was heading towards a residential neighborhood on the outskirts of town. She checked her GPS standard procedure, double-checked the address, and then set off. But somehow, something wasn't quite right. The street numbers seemed off. The house was nestled at the far end of the block, a quiet corner home that looked nothing like the modern condo she had expected. But there it was. Emily pulled up, double-checked the order, and even though the numbers didn't quite match up, the app confirmed it. She figured it was just a typo or some other small glitch in the system. So, she did what she always did, she dropped the food at the doorstep and moved on. But as Emily drove away, she couldn't shake the nagging feeling that something wasn't right. She'd been working for years, and something about this particular delivery felt off. Was it the fact that the house didn't look like it belonged to the person who ordered the meal? Was it the way the door had opened just a second too soon, as if the person on the other side had been waiting? Or was it the fact that, for a split second, Emily had felt like she was being watched? She couldn't tell. But when she received a text shortly after, asking her to return to the house, she couldn't help but feel uneasy. When she got there, she was greeted by a man in his mid-30s, dressed casually in a sweatshirt and jeans. He didn't seem particularly angry or upset. In fact, he seemed almost amused. "You've got the wrong house," he said, smiling in a way that didn't quite sit right with her. "But it's okay. I'll take it inside. He didn't even wait for her response. He just reached out, grabbed the bag, and walked inside without so much as a second glance. Something in that moment, in the way he moved, made Emily's stomach churn. It wasn't that he was rude, quite the opposite. He was polite, maybe even overly so, but there was an eerie calmness in the way he accepted the mistake. It was then that she noticed something strange. A set of identical bags, exactly like the one she had just delivered, sitting next to the front door, all with the same restaurant logo. It didn't make sense. How could this guy be receiving deliveries from the same restaurant as the one she was supposed to deliver to? Had the mistake been on his end, not hers? Or was there something more to this story than a simple error? Emily's mind raced with questions, but she didn't have answers. She could feel the tension in the air, as though there were forces at play just beyond her understanding. As she drove off, she tried to shake the feeling that something had gone wrong. She'd made plenty of delivery mistakes before, but this one felt different. But here's the thing, she wasn't the only one who was about to be affected by this wrong delivery. On the other side of town, there was another house, an entirely different situation unfolding that Emily knew nothing about. It was the house where the meal was meant to go. The real customer, the one who had placed the order, was a woman named Sarah. Now, Sarah wasn't just any customer. She had been going through her own challenges that had her questioning everything about her life. Like Emily, she had recently gone through a breakup, but hers had been even more complicated. Her ex-husband, someone she had tried to keep in her life for the sake of their 2 kids, had become distant, unrecognizable, and eventually, completely absent. Sarah had tried everything to salvage what was left, but nothing seemed to work. She'd put on a brave face for her children, kept up with the demands of work, and tried to keep her emotions at bay. But deep down, she felt utterly alone. The day the food was meant to arrive, Sarah had been feeling particularly low. She had spent the morning trying to find the strength to move forward, to accept the end of her marriage once and for all. But the loneliness was still there, gnawing at her. When she received the text saying that her food had been delivered, she felt a glimmer of hope. A small comfort in an otherwise empty day. But when she arrived at her door, the meal wasn't there. Confused, she checked the order again and realized there had been an issue. She tried to call the delivery service, but they weren't answering. Frustrated, she decided to make do with what she had in the kitchen and let it go. But the truth was, something inside her had cracked open just a little more. The universe, it seemed, was playing its cruel game once again. But that's where it gets even stranger. Just as Sarah was settling in for a quiet night, her phone buzzed. It was a message from an unknown number. It was Emily, the delivery driver. The message read, "I think I delivered your food to the wrong house. I'm sorry. If you want, I can come back and fix it." It was the kind of message that would have made most people angry, but Sarah, in her current state, felt an inexplicable pull to reach out. Maybe it was the sadness. Maybe it was the feeling that she was somehow connected to Emily, even though they had never met. She typed a quick reply, "It's okay. It happens. Thank you for letting me know." But as she hit send, something in the back of her mind told her this wasn't over. Something had shifted. And somehow, she knew she was about to be drawn into a story far more complex than just a missed delivery. What she didn't know was that this was the first step in a chain of events that would intertwine her life with Emily's in ways neither of them could have ever predicted. The wrong house. The wrong meal. It was just the beginning. As Emily sat in her car, still grappling with the odd sense of discomfort that lingered after the delivery, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was seriously wrong. She had tried to brush it off, telling herself it was just a small mistake, one that she'd encounter again in her line of work. But the more she thought about it, the more the strange details piled up in her mind, the identical bags, the way the man had acted, and the text message she had sent to Sarah. Everything felt off. But Emily had no solid proof. She was just a delivery driver. What could she possibly uncover? Who would believe her if she started asking too many questions? Still, something kept nagging at her. She couldn't stop herself from feeling like this was more than just a case of misplaced food. "Emily, I don't know if you should keep pushing. Something is off with this whole thing. I've been getting these weird vibes, like I'm being followed, watched even. You need to be careful. Whoever or whatever you're digging into, it's dangerous. And I don't think I can help you anymore. The phone clicked in her ear before Emily could respond, leaving her speechless. She stared at her screen, bewildered, the same unsettling feeling creeping back into her thoughts. Jake, of all people, was scared. Why would he suddenly back off? Was he involved? Or was he just another pawn caught in a much bigger game? Emily wasn't sure, but she knew one thing for certain: she couldn't afford to stop now. The next morning, Emily received another unexpected call. This time, it was from Sarah, the woman whose food had originally been delivered to the wrong house. Emily hadn't heard from her in days, and she had almost begun to think that Sarah had forgotten about the whole ordeal. But when she answered, it was clear that Sarah hadn't been able to shake the strange occurrences either. Emily, something's going on, and I need you to listen to me. I know you said you wouldn't stop, but now I'm not so sure you should be looking into this anymore. Emily's chest tightened. What was Sarah talking about? Just like Jake, she seemed to be backing off. But why? Sarah continued, her voice trembling slightly. I've been thinking about the house you delivered to, the one that wasn't mine. I told you to be careful, but now I'm seeing things that don't make sense. I've been doing some digging, and there are names I don't recognize connected to this house. People I can't track down. But every time I try to get closer, something stops me: phone calls, emails from accounts I didn't open. It's like someone is making sure I don't uncover something. Emily, this isn't just a mistake. It's planned. Someone is pulling the strings. Emily felt the air rush out of her lungs. Planned. Someone was pulling the strings. Who could be behind all of this, and why were they so determined to stop her from finding out the truth? Her mind raced as she processed Sarah's words. Everything about the situation had shifted. What had started as a food delivery mishap had now spiraled into something far darker, far more dangerous. But why were they both being warned off? What was the real reason behind all of this? Just as Emily was about to respond, the phone line cut out, leaving her in stunned silence. She tried to call Sarah back, but the call wouldn't go through. There was nothing but a dead dial tone. Her head was spinning. Was Sarah in danger? Was she being threatened, just like Emily had been? Or was Sarah part of something much bigger, something she was now trying to protect Emily from? It was all so confusing. Frustrated and desperate for answers, Emily decided to go back to the house one more time. She had to figure out what was happening, no matter the cost. As she approached the block, she noticed something she hadn't seen before: a black sedan parked at the curb across from the house. The tinted windows made it impossible to see who was inside, but the vehicle looked suspiciously out of place. Emily parked further down the street and decided to wait. After several minutes, the car's engine roared to life, and it slowly began to pull away. Emily followed at a safe distance, her heart pounding in her chest. The sedan turned a corner and drove into a residential neighborhood not far from the city center. It stopped outside a rundown building on the outskirts of town, an area Emily recognized only vaguely. She had passed through here a few times but never stopped to look around. The building was old, the windows boarded up, and there was a sense of decay to the whole place. She parked at a distance, her hands shaking as she took out her phone and snapped a picture of the license plate. Whoever was connected to the house, to the strange deliveries, was hiding something. But what? Just as she was about to leave, Emily caught sight of something she didn't expect: a figure standing at the door of the building. It was the man from the house, the one who had received the wrong delivery. He was standing there, watching the car drive away, his eyes scanning the street like he was waiting for someone. Emily's breath hitched in her throat. Was this his hiding spot? Was he the one behind everything? Or was he another pawn in a much larger game? Before Emily could make sense of what she had just seen, the man turned and disappeared inside the building. Her mind raced. Was this the break she had been waiting for? Or was it just another dead end? One thing was certain: everything had just escalated. And now, with every step forward, Emily couldn't help but feel that someone was always one step ahead, watching her every move. The truth seemed closer than ever, but the more she uncovered, the more dangerous it became. She was no longer just chasing a wrong delivery. She was uncovering a secret that someone was desperate to keep buried. And the closer she got to the answers, the more the stakes seemed to rise. The air around Emily felt thick, suffocating, as she sat in her car across from the building where she had seen the man disappear into. Her hands were clammy, her heart thumping in her chest like a war drum. She didn't know what had just happened, whether she was finally onto something or just spiraling deeper into a nightmare she couldn't escape. Every instinct told her to turn back, to walk away, but something in her gut told her that she was closer than ever to the truth. The adrenaline rush was almost too much to bear, and yet, her body refused to leave the scene. The figure, the man from the house, had slipped into that abandoned building without a trace, and now Emily couldn't help but wonder, what exactly was he hiding in there? And more importantly, why was she the one being drawn into this twisted puzzle? Her thoughts kept racing in circles, unable to find any clarity. She considered driving away, but that sense of dread, the idea that someone was watching, waiting, held her in place. She kept replaying the sequence of events in her mind, trying to piece together the jumbled fragments of information, but it felt like she was running on a hamster wheel. Everything she knew kept slipping through her fingers, just out of reach, as if someone, some invisible hand, was determined to keep her in the dark. The wrong delivery, Sarah's warnings, Jake's strange call, the disappearing evidence, nothing added up, and every time Emily thought she had a lead, it turned to dust. Suddenly, her phone vibrated, snapping her back to reality. It was a message from Sarah, an urgent one. "Emily, I think I'm being followed. Someone's been parked outside my place for hours. I don't know who they are, but they've been watching me. I'm scared." A cold shiver ran down Emily's spine as she read the words, her stomach turning over. Sarah had been a part of all of this from the start. Emily couldn't afford to lose her too, not now, when things were so close to unraveling. Without thinking, she quickly typed back, telling Sarah to stay inside and lock the doors. But as she hit send, Emily couldn't shake the growing sense of unease. She'd seen that man outside the building, but now it seemed like the danger wasn't just tied to him, it was everywhere. Was Sarah really being followed? Or was someone trying to draw her in, get her to make a move? Emily couldn't tell, and the uncertainty was eating at her. Just as she was about to call Sarah, her phone buzzed again, but this time, it wasn't Sarah. The words hit her like a punch to the gut, and before she could process what they meant, a chill ran through her as the hair on the back of her neck stood up. She looked around, her breath shallow, scanning the street around her. The sedan from earlier, the one she had followed, was parked nearby, its engine off but its tinted windows facing her directly. No one had gotten out of the car. No one had moved. It was like they were waiting for her to make her next move. Her mind was clouded with paranoia now. She could feel the weight of eyes on her, even though she couldn't see anyone. She had no proof, no concrete evidence that anyone was watching, but every fiber in her body screamed that she wasn't alone. The sudden realization hit her like a ton of bricks: she was being followed. And no matter how hard she tried to shake it off, she couldn't deny the overwhelming sense of danger that was now inescapable. The worst part? She had no idea who it was, or what they wanted from her. Everything had spiraled out of control, and now, even the people she trusted, Sarah, Jake, were becoming entangled in the mess. Panic was clawing at her insides, but Emily refused to let it win. She had to figure this out. She had to find Sarah and make sure she was safe. Gripping the steering wheel with white-knuckled fingers, Emily revved the engine and pulled away from the building, glancing back at the black sedan in her rearview mirror. It was still there, still following her, like a shadow that wouldn't leave. As she made her way toward Sarah's apartment, the nagging feeling grew stronger. Emily had never been one to jump to conclusions, but everything felt off now. Sarah's sudden fear. The black sedan. The messages. It all pointed to something sinister, something calculated, and the idea that she was just one small piece of a much larger puzzle began to settle into her bones. She wasn't just a random delivery driver anymore. She wasn't just a bystander. She was in the middle of something terrifying, something that was pulling her deeper with every step she took. When Emily finally arrived at Sarah's apartment complex, she parked a block away and cautiously approached on foot, her senses heightened. The night was eerily quiet, save for the occasional distant sound of traffic. As she neared Sarah's building, She noticed something that made her freeze. The front door of the building was ajar, just slightly. It hadn't been like that when she'd arrived earlier. And the feeling of being watched. It was even stronger now. Emily's heart was pounding in her chest as she took slow, deliberate steps toward the door, her instincts screaming at her to turn back, to run. But she couldn't. Not now. Not when Sarah's safety was on the line. She pushed the door open cautiously, but before she could even step inside, her phone rang again. It was Sarah. Emily answered, her voice tight with tension. Sarah, are you okay? Where are you? But instead of hearing Sarah's voice, she heard only the sound of heavy breathing on the other end. The breath was uneven, panicked. Then came a whisper, barely audible. He's here, Emily. They're here. The call abruptly cut off. Fear surged through Emily like a tidal wave. She rushed into the building, her mind racing, heart pounding in her ears. She wasn't thinking clearly anymore. Every step felt like it was leading her deeper into the unknown, into something dangerous, something she might not be able to get out of. She reached Sarah's apartment door, knocking furiously, but there was no answer. Her stomach twisted. The door was still ajar. It was at that moment, as Emily stepped into the apartment, that she felt the full weight of the situation crash down on her. The apartment was empty. There was no sign of Sarah. No struggle. But everything was off. The TV was on, the lights were dimmed, and Sarah's phone sat on the couch, its screen cracked. Emily's pulse hammered in her throat. This wasn't right. It was as if Sarah had vanished into thin air. Suddenly, the hairs on the back of Emily's neck prickled as she felt the presence of someone standing behind her. Before she could turn around, a cold voice whispered in her ear, "You should have stopped looking." The blood drained from Emily's face as she spun around, but the room was empty. No one was there. The apartment was still, suffocating in its silence. Her mind was in freefall as the magnitude of what was happening sank in. Someone was playing a game with her, and she had no idea who it was. Worse, she had no idea how far it reached. The urgency of it all hit her hard. Sarah was gone. She was next. There was no turning back now. She was in danger, and it wasn't just about the food delivery anymore, it was about her life. The stakes were higher than she could have ever imagined. And the worst part? She still didn't know who was behind it all. But now, more than ever, Emily had to uncover the truth before it was too late. Before whatever this was consumed everything she knew. As Emily stood in the silence of Sarah's apartment, the weight of everything that had happened was almost too much to bear. Her heart was still pounding in her chest, her mind racing to catch up with the whirlwind of events that had led her here. Sarah was gone, vanished without a trace, and all Emily had was an empty apartment and an overwhelming sense of dread. She'd spent days trying to piece together the mystery, pulling at the threads of a wrong food delivery, strange warnings, and shadowy figures. But now, in the quiet stillness of the apartment, something shifted. Something felt wrong. Everything she had believed about the situation suddenly felt hollow, like the whole thing had been a carefully constructed illusion. Her phone buzzed, snapping her back to reality. It was a new message from Jake. The message itself wasn't what she expected, it wasn't the usual words of concern or cryptic warnings. Instead, it was a short video clip. Emily hesitated for a moment, her fingers trembling as she tapped the play button. The video opened to a grainy shot of Sarah's apartment building, taken from a distance, likely by a hidden camera. The timestamp showed it was taken the previous night, around the time Emily had been following the black sedan. But what caught Emily's attention wasn't the building itself, it was the figure in the frame, standing near the entrance. It was Sarah. But she wasn't alone. Another person stood beside her, obscured by shadows, someone Emily had never seen before. The video only lasted a few seconds, but those few seconds were enough to send a chill down her spine. Sarah was talking to the stranger, nodding as they exchanged something, an envelope, maybe? Emily could barely make out the details, but it was clear, Sarah wasn't just a victim in this story. She was involved. Somehow, Sarah was part of something bigger, something that Emily had failed to see until now. And that realization hit her like a ton of bricks. Everything she had thought she knew, the wrong delivery, the threats, the mysterious warnings had all been carefully orchestrated. But by whom? And why? Her hands shook as she re-watched the video, unable to pull herself away. The fact that Sarah had been hiding something, that she had been meeting with someone in secret, sent Emily's mind spinning. Had Sarah been playing her from the start? Or was she in over her head, caught in something far more dangerous than Emily could have imagined? It was impossible to know. But the one thing Emily knew for sure was that she had missed something crucial. And that mistake, her failure to see the truth, could cost her everything. She was pulled out of her thoughts by the sound of footsteps behind her. Instinctively, Emily spun around, her breath catching in her throat, but there was no one there. The apartment was as empty as it had been when she entered. She felt the pressure of the walls closing in on her, the overwhelming sense of being watched returning, stronger than ever. The paranoia was almost unbearable now. She was no longer sure who to trust. She didn't even know if she could trust herself anymore. The message from Jake had shattered everything she thought she knew. She needed answers, desperately. But just as she was about to leave the apartment and head for Sarah's last known location, another message popped up on her screen. It was from an unknown number, and it was even more cryptic than the last. The truth isn't what you think, Emily. Stop digging. It's too late. Her blood ran cold. This wasn't just a random warning anymore. Someone was watching her, tracking her every move. Whoever it was, they were getting closer. And yet, the more Emily tried to push forward, the more she felt like she was being dragged deeper into a web she couldn't escape. But the message wasn't just a threat, it was a clue. The way it was worded, the timing of it, felt intentional. Emily's mind clicked into overdrive as she thought back to everything she'd learned so far, piecing together fragments of information. What if Sarah wasn't just the victim? What if she had known more than she let on? What if she wasn't really missing at all, but had simply disappeared to cover her tracks? And then there was Jake, her old friend, who had always been so supportive, so eager to help her uncover the truth. What if he was hiding something too? The realization hit her like a flash of lightning. Jake was more involved in this than he had ever let on. It wasn't just a coincidence that he had sent her the video. He had been following her all along, watching every move she made. The puzzle pieces started to fall into place, but they didn't form the picture Emily had been expecting. She wasn't the one being targeted, she was the one being tested. This wasn't some random chain of events, it was all carefully orchestrated, and she had unknowingly played right into it. Without thinking, Emily dialed Jake's number, her fingers trembling as she pressed the phone to her ear. He picked up on the first ring, his voice calm, too calm. "Emily, you got my message. Are you okay?" She didn't answer immediately. Her mind was spinning, her breath shallow. She could feel the lie in his voice, the way he was trying to cover something up. There was something about the way he spoke that felt off, like he was hiding something big. "Jake," Emily said slowly, her voice steady despite the panic rising inside her. "I saw the video. I know about Sarah. I know you've been watching me." There was a long pause on the other end of the line, and then Jake's voice broke the silence, quieter now, more guarded. "I didn't want you to get involved in this, Emily. It was never supposed to be like this. You were never supposed to find out." The words sent a chill through her. What was he talking about? Why was he so terrified of her finding out the truth? What exactly was the truth? And why had everything felt so manipulated from the start? Emily's pulse quickened as she leaned forward, her mind racing for answers. "What are you talking about, Jake? What is this? Why are you involved in all of this? Why is Sarah involved?" Jake sighed, his voice barely a whisper now. "Because we were all part of the plan from the beginning, Emily. All of us. You, me, Sarah, we were never meant to be innocent bystanders. We were all pawns in someone else's game. And now that you've started looking, there's no turning back. You've seen too much. They'll come after you, just like they came after Sarah. Just like they came after me." The line went dead. The click of the call disconnecting echoed in her ear, leaving her standing there in stunned silence. She was no longer sure who was behind the plot, or why they had pulled her in. She had trusted Jake, trusted Sarah, but now, it felt like she had been played from the start. The entire mystery had been a game she hadn't even known she was part of. But now, as the pieces continued to fall into place, Emily realized something even more terrifying. She wasn't the one pulling the strings. She was the one being controlled. The phone buzzed again, this time with a new message from the unknown number. Game over, Emily. You've already lost. And for the first time since this entire nightmare had begun, Emily understood the gravity of the situation. The stakes weren't just about finding the truth, they were about survival. She wasn't just uncovering a mystery. She was caught in a trap. And the worst part? The people she had trusted most were the ones who had set it all in motion. Emily's heart was still racing, her mind whirling from the last conversation with Jake. His words echoed in her mind like a nightmare that wouldn't end. We were all part of the plan from the beginning. You, me, Sarah, we were never meant to be innocent bystanders. Every instinct she had screamed for answers, for the truth, but as the pieces started falling into place, she realized how deeply she was entangled in this mess. It wasn't just a case of someone playing her for a fool. She was part of something bigger, something darker, and it was impossible to ignore the feeling that the walls were closing in fast. She wasn't just being watched anymore, she was being hunted. And the hardest part? The people closest to her, the ones she had trusted the most, were either caught up in this or the ones pulling the strings. The night felt heavier now, suffocating in its silence as she paced the small apartment, running through every possibility, trying to think through the maze of lies, deception, and secrets she had uncovered. Emily had always prided herself on being sharp, on being able to see through the bullshit, but now, the world around her was warped. The trust she had placed in her friends, in Jake and Sarah, had been shattered in a way she couldn't even begin to process. She wasn't sure who to blame, herself for getting involved, or them for dragging her into this nightmare. Either way, she had no choice now but to keep moving forward, to figure out what the hell was really going on, even if it meant making choices she wasn't ready for. She had barely sat down when her phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't a message, it was a call from an unknown number, a call she knew she had to answer, no matter how much her gut told her not to. She swallowed hard and picked up, trying to steady her breath, but when she heard the voice on the other end, it wasn't one she expected. Emily, Jake's voice was tight, strained. I need you to listen to me. There's no time. I've already said too much, but if you don't do what I say, everything's going to fall apart. Her pulse quickened as she tried to keep her voice steady. What do you mean? Jake, what's going on? You've got to stop with the cryptic shit and tell me what the hell is happening. What is this plan you're talking about? Why is Sarah involved? What do you know? Jake sighed heavily, and for a brief moment, Emily could hear the tremor in his breath. It wasn't the calm, collected tone he'd always used with her. This was someone cornered, someone who knew they were about to lose everything. I never wanted you to find out, Emily. You were never supposed to get involved in this. But now, it's too late. And you have to choose. You have to choose between your safety and the truth. You need to decide if you want to walk away and live, or if you want to keep digging and risk everything. Emily's mind spun as she tried to absorb his words, trying to make sense of what he was saying. Jake, stop. This isn't some kind of game. I need to know what's going on. I'm already in this, so don't. No, you don't get it, he interrupted sharply. They'll come after you if you keep going down this path. You don't know who you're messing with. You don't know what's at stake. I do. I've seen it. I've been part of it for too long. And I don't want you to get caught in the crossfire. If you keep pushing, you'll lose more than just your life, you'll lose everything. And once you've crossed that line, there's no turning back. Emily felt like the ground beneath her was slipping away. She wasn't sure if it was fear or anger, but the pressure in her chest was unbearable. The ultimatum he was giving her, her safety or the truth, felt impossible. She wasn't someone who ran from danger. She had always fought for what was right, for the truth, no matter the cost. But now, the cost felt like it was more than just her life. It was Sarah. It was everything she had ever believed about the world. It was everything she thought she knew about the people she trusted. Jake, stop trying to protect me, she shouted, her voice cracking with frustration. What is this? What have you been hiding? Who are you really? Who's behind all of this? What did you get me into? There was a long pause, and for a moment, Emily thought he wasn't going to answer. But then, in a voice almost too quiet to hear, Jake said, "You really want to know? You really want the truth? It's not who you think it is. And it's not about Sarah either. It's about the money. It's about the deal. They'll stop at nothing to get what they want. And they want you, Emily. They want you more than anything." The words felt like a punch to the gut. They were too vague, too cryptic, and yet Emily felt like she was on the edge of something massive. Something she couldn't ignore. Jake's voice wavered again, and the line crackled with static as if something was interfering with the call. "Emily, don't do this. You don't know what they're capable of. Please, just walk away. If you do, you'll be safe. But if you don't, you'll regret it. And so will everyone you care about." The call ended abruptly, and Emily was left standing in the middle of the apartment, her hand still clutching the phone, her mind racing. She had heard the desperation in Jake's voice, the fear that he was trying to protect her from something far worse than she could imagine. But the truth was, Emily wasn't sure she could trust him anymore. Not after everything he had kept from her, not after the twisted web of lies he had woven. A knock at the door broke her out of her thoughts, and she froze, her heart leaping into her throat. Who was it? Was it Jake? Was it someone else, someone more dangerous, someone who wanted to finish what they had started? Slowly, cautiously, Emily moved toward the door, every muscle in her body tense with anticipation, ready to react. When she opened the door, her breath caught in her throat. There, standing in front of her, was Sarah. But she wasn't the same. Her eyes were wide with fear, her face pale, and she looked as though she hadn't slept in days. Her hands trembled, and for a moment, Emily didn't know whether to run, to hug her, or to demand answers. "Emily," Sarah whispered, her voice shaking. "It's not what you think. You need to listen to me. They're coming. They know everything. And you're in more danger than you realize." Emily's mind reeled, her emotions a tangle of confusion and anger. She had so many questions, but none of them seemed to matter. In that moment, all that mattered was that Sarah was here, and everything she had believed about this situation was about to be turned on its head. The truth was slipping away, out of her reach, and the choices before her were getting harder to bear. She could still walk away, try to save herself, or she could keep pushing forward, risking everything to uncover the truth, even if it meant losing everything she held dear. And as the weight of that decision settled on her shoulders, Emily knew one thing for sure: there was no easy way out. No matter which path she chose, it would change everything. The weight of Sarah's sudden appearance at the door didn't hit Emily right away, not until she saw the raw terror in her eyes. It wasn't the look of someone who had been hiding, it was the look of someone running from something they couldn't outrun. And that made Emily's heart race, her chest tighten with dread. What had Sarah been running from? What had she been caught up in? She wanted answers, but the questions that swirled in her mind felt like they were suffocating her. Without waiting for Emily to speak, Sarah stepped into the apartment, looking over her shoulder nervously before closing the door behind her. Her breath was shallow, and there was something off in the way she moved, like she didn't want to be seen. Like she was afraid of being followed. And Emily could feel it, too, the presence of danger in the air. It wasn't just the unsettling things they had uncovered, it was the fact that everything was spiraling faster than she could keep up with. "Emily," Sarah said, voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't want you to get involved. I thought I could fix it. I thought I could stop them before you knew too much." Emily's gut twisted. She didn't know whether to feel betrayed or relieved that Sarah was finally talking, finally letting her in on the secret that had been eating away at both of them. But as the words hit her, something about Sarah's urgency, her frantic energy, made it clear that this wasn't some isolated case. This wasn't about a wrong food delivery, a few cryptic messages, or a hidden agenda. No, this was something bigger, much bigger than Emily had ever imagined. The conspiracy was far-reaching, entangling more lives than she could have thought possible. "Sarah, you have to tell me everything," Emily demanded, her voice shaking with a mix of fear and frustration. "What the hell is going on? Who are they? What's this about? And why the hell didn't you tell me sooner?" Sarah's eyes flickered with panic, but she took a deep breath and steadied herself. "It's not just us, Emily. You're not the only one they've been watching. They've been keeping tabs on me for months now, even longer. They have eyes everywhere, in places you wouldn't even suspect. It started with small stuff at first. I thought I was just paranoid, but then the messages, the phone calls, the warnings, they started getting worse. And they were too precise. Too controlled. She paused, her eyes darkening as she looked past Emily, her voice barely audible. The people who are behind this aren't some random criminals. It's bigger than that. They have connections, power, resources. They're the kind of people who don't just stop with one person. They'll destroy everything if it means getting what they want. The room seemed to grow smaller as Sarah's words sank in, and Emily felt the enormity of the situation crashing over her. The conspiracy was a spider's web, stretching out far beyond what either of them had imagined. And there was nowhere to hide. She wasn't just a bystander in this anymore, she was part of it. She could feel it in her bones, the undeniable truth. But that only made the stakes higher. If the people behind this could do this to Sarah, to someone she trusted, how far would they go to silence her? How far would they go to keep the truth buried? Emily's pulse raced as her mind scrambled for answers, for anything that would make sense of this tangled mess. But before she could say anything, Sarah's voice broke through her thoughts again, more urgent this time. Emily, you have to get out of here. They'll come for us both if they know I've talked. They can track us through our phones, our emails, our every movement. We're not safe here. They know I'm here. And they know you've been asking questions. A cold chill ran down Emily's spine. The reality of Sarah's words hit her with brutal clarity. She wasn't just a target because of the food delivery or the messages, it was because she had dared to uncover the truth. And now, there was no way back. There was no running from it. She was in too deep. And the people who were orchestrating all of this, they had made sure of it. Before Emily could respond, her phone buzzed again. She grabbed it, heart hammering, but the message made her blood run cold. We know you've been asking questions, Emily. You've seen too much. It's already too late for you to stop. The consequences of your curiosity will be severe. We're watching. The words were a death sentence. Emily felt her stomach drop, the weight of the message crashing over her. She was trapped. No matter which way she turned, there was no escaping it now. She had no idea who was behind the threat, who could possibly have this kind of reach, but one thing was clear, this wasn't about a wrong delivery or a mistake. This was a carefully planned operation, and Emily had just stepped right into its crosshairs. Her mind raced as she realized the implications of what Sarah had just said. It wasn't just the two of them. They were part of something so much bigger. There were more people involved, people she didn't know, people she couldn't trust. And the further she dug, the more dangerous it became. The truth, the answers she so desperately wanted, were slipping further and further from her grasp. Who else is involved, Sarah? Emily asked, her voice a mix of desperation and determination. Who can we trust? You have to tell me. Who's behind all of this? But Sarah's eyes flickered with something darker, something Emily hadn't expected. She took a step back, her face contorting in a mixture of guilt and fear. You don't get it, Emily, she whispered, her voice barely audible. I didn't want you to know this, but Jake. He's not just trying to protect you. He's part of it. He's working with them. The world seemed to stop for a moment as those words hit like a freight train. Jake. Her closest friend. The one person she had trusted completely. And now Sarah was telling her that Jake was involved in this twisted conspiracy, working against her all along. The shock was overwhelming, and for a moment, Emily couldn't breathe. She had been holding on to the idea that maybe, just maybe, Jake could still be trusted. But now she realized how wrong she had been. No, Emily whispered, barely able to process what she was hearing. That's impossible. He's been helping me. He's been trying to protect me. Sarah shook her head slowly, her eyes filled with sorrow. He's been playing you, Emily. He's been using you to dig deeper, to get closer to what they're after. And now that you've found too much, they'll do whatever it takes to silence both of you. The truth crashed into Emily like a wave, drowning her in a sea of betrayal and fear. Jake had been manipulating her from the start. The cryptic messages, the warnings, the way he had been so eager to help her, all of it had been part of the plan. The truth, whatever it was, had to be hidden, and Emily had been too close to discovering it. And then it hit her. This wasn't just about uncovering a mystery. This was a game. A deadly game, where everyone she thought she could trust had been playing their part. And now, with everything unraveling, she had to make a choice. Keep pushing for the truth, and risk her life and the lives of the people she cared about, or walk away and disappear, knowing she would never be able to escape the shadow of this conspiracy. There was no time to think anymore. The danger was real. The clock was ticking. The stakes had never been higher. And Emily had no idea how deep the rabbit hole went. The air in the warehouse was thick with tension, each breath Emily took feeling like it might be her last. Every nerve in her body was on high alert, and the echoing silence around her only added to the unease. She had come this far, despite the threats, despite the constant fear, and now, standing in the shadows of this place, she knew the truth was just within reach. But what she didn't know was whether she would make it out alive to tell anyone. Her heart pounded as she surveyed the room, the dim light from a few scattered bulbs casting long shadows on the concrete floor. There were no sounds, no signs of anyone moving except for the occasional creak of metal from somewhere deeper within the maze of storage units. The confrontation was coming. She could feel it. It had all led here, to this moment. Sarah had disappeared hours ago, leaving Emily to face whatever lay ahead alone. Her phone had gone silent, and the more she thought about it, the more she realized that Sarah might have been the last piece to fall. It was all part of a plan, one that Jake, the person she had trusted most, had been orchestrating from the very start. She had believed in him, in their friendship, but the past few hours had peeled back the layers to reveal a darker truth than she could have ever imagined. Emily was close to the truth, so close, but every step felt like it could be her last. She had pieced together what she could, the mysterious deliveries, the hidden messages, the power players behind the curtain, but what had started as a simple mistake had blossomed into a web of corruption, deceit, and manipulation. But now, the key piece she needed was within arm's reach. The final piece of evidence. She just had to confront the one person who could answer all her questions. The one person who had been pulling the strings all along. Emily, the voice cut through the stillness of the warehouse, sending a shiver down her spine. She turned, her breath catching as she locked eyes with Jake, standing in the doorway. His silhouette framed by the harsh light of the exit behind him. He wasn't alone. Two other figures, both unfamiliar, stood just behind him. The air was electric, crackling with the intensity of the moment. He wasn't here to help her. He wasn't here to protect her. He was here to finish what he had started. "I knew you'd come. You're persistent, I'll give you that," Jake said, his voice low but sharp, cutting through the tension. His eyes flickered with something she couldn't quite read, something dangerous. "You should have stayed away, Emily. This didn't have to get ugly." Emily's fists clenched at her sides, her thoughts spinning. She had trusted him. She had confided in him. But now, all of that felt like a distant memory, a cruel trick. "You've been lying to me this whole time," she said, her voice shaking with a mix of anger and disbelief. "You used me. All of this, everything, it's been a game to you." Jake's expression remained unreadable, but there was something in his eyes now, something almost regretful, as if he hadn't wanted it to come to this. "It wasn't supposed to be like this, Em. You were supposed to stay out of it. I never wanted you to get this deep, but now that you have, you know too much. They'll never stop coming after you." "They?" Emily asked, her voice thick with confusion. "Who's they, Jake? Who the hell are you working for?" Jake didn't answer immediately. Instead, he stepped forward, and the two men behind him flanked him, positioning themselves like a wall between Emily and the door. There was nowhere to run. Nowhere to hide. The walls, both literal and metaphorical, were closing in. "The people you've been digging into aren't just a small-time operation, Emily," Jake said, his voice cold now, like he was reciting a script he had rehearsed. "This is bigger than you think. Bigger than anyone thinks. And it's not about a delivery gone wrong, or some stupid misunderstanding. It's about power. Control. Money. Everything you've seen, everything you think you know, is a distraction. Emily's heart raced as his words crashed over her like a wave. "What do you mean?" she whispered, barely able to process it. "What's really going on? What's this all about?" Jake's lips curled into a small, almost sad smile. "You really don't get it, do you? The wrong food, the wrong address, it was all planned. It was a test, Emily. A test to see how far you'd go, how much you'd uncover. And you've passed every test. But now you've found the truth. And the truth is something you can't walk away from." Suddenly, everything clicked. Emily's mind raced, memories flooding back. The strange symbols on the delivery receipts, the coded messages, the way people had acted when they thought she wasn't watching. This wasn't just about a food delivery. It wasn't about a mistake. It was a scheme, a setup, a way to bring her into a world she never could have imagined. "You're working with them," Emily said, her voice thick with disbelief. "You've been manipulating me the whole time." Jake nodded slowly, his face expressionless. "I didn't want to. But you were always a part of it, Emily. From the moment you opened that door, you became a player in a game that's been going on for years. You just didn't know it yet." The words hung in the air, thick with the weight of betrayal. Emily's stomach twisted in knots. Everything she had believed in, everything she had fought for, had been built on lies. But there was one thing she hadn't considered. One piece she hadn't thought about. "Sarah," she said, barely able to whisper the name. You were using her too, weren't you?" Jake's eyes flickered, and for a moment, there was a crack in his facade, a brief glimpse of something real behind the mask. Sarah was never supposed to get involved. But once she did, it was already too late. She was just another piece to move. "Like you." The truth was crushing, suffocating. Emily had been nothing more than a pawn in a game she hadn't even known she was playing. But now, the final pieces of the puzzle were falling into place. And as the weight of that truth settled over her, she realized one thing above all else: this was bigger than Jake. Bigger than Sarah. Bigger than anything she had imagined. The air shifted. There was a sound in the distance, footsteps approaching fast, voices growing louder. Jake's expression hardened, and the men behind him tensed. The door that had once felt like her escape route was now the final barrier between her and the chaos that was about to consume her. And then, before she could even think, the last unexpected twist hit. A figure stepped into the warehouse, moving so quickly that Emily almost didn't see it at first. It was Sarah. But she wasn't alone. She had someone with her, someone who Emily didn't recognize at first. And then, as the figure stepped forward, the truth hit her like a freight train. It was the last person she ever expected. The person who had been hiding in plain sight. The person who had been orchestrating everything all along. Her own mother. His silhouette framed by the harsh light of the exit behind him. He wasn't alone. Two other figures, both unfamiliar, stood just behind him. The air was electric, crackling with the intensity of the moment. He wasn't here to help her. He wasn't here to protect her. He was here to finish what he had started. "I knew you'd come. You're persistent, I'll give you that," Jake said, his voice low but sharp, cutting through the tension. His eyes flickered with something she couldn't quite read, something dangerous. "You should have stayed away, Emily. This didn't have to get ugly." Emily's fists clenched at her sides, her thoughts spinning. She had trusted him. She had confided in him. But now, all of that felt like a distant memory, a cruel trick. "You've been lying to me this whole time," she said, her voice shaking with a mix of anger and disbelief. "You used me. All of this, everything, it's been a game to you." Jake's expression remained unreadable, but there was something in his eyes now, something almost regretful, as if he hadn't wanted it to come to this. "It wasn't supposed to be like this, Em. You were supposed to stay out of it. I never wanted you to get this deep, but now that you have, you know too much. They'll never stop coming after you." "They?" Emily asked, her voice thick with confusion. "Who's they, Jake? Who the hell are you working for?" Jake didn't answer immediately. Instead, he stepped forward, and the two men behind him flanked him, positioning themselves like a wall between Emily and the door. There was nowhere to run. Nowhere to hide. The walls, both literal and metaphorical, were closing in. The people you've been digging into aren't just a small-time operation, Emily, Jake said, his voice cold now, like he was reciting a script he had rehearsed. This is bigger than you think. Bigger than anyone thinks. And it's not about a delivery gone wrong, or some stupid misunderstanding. It's about power. Control. Money. Everything you've seen, everything you think you know, is a distraction. Emily's heart raced as his words crashed over her like a wave. What do you mean? She whispered, barely able to process it. What's really going on? What's this all about? Jake's lips curled into a small, almost sad smile. You really don't get it, do you? The wrong food, the wrong address, it was all planned. It was a test, Emily. A test to see how far you'd go, how much you'd uncover. And you've passed every test. But now you've found the truth. And the truth is something you can't walk away from. Suddenly, everything clicked. Emily's mind raced, memories flooding back. The strange symbols on the delivery receipts, the coded messages, the way people had acted when they thought she wasn't watching. This wasn't just about a food delivery. It wasn't about a mistake. It was a scheme, a setup, a way to bring her into a world she never could have imagined. You're working with them, Emily said, her voice thick with disbelief. You've been manipulating me the whole time. Jake nodded slowly, his face expressionless. I didn't want to. But you were always a part of it, Emily. From the moment you opened that door, you became a player in a game that's been going on for years. You just didn't know it yet. The words hung in the air, thick with the weight of betrayal. Emily's stomach twisted in knots. Everything she had believed in, everything she had fought for, had been built on lies. But there was one thing she hadn't considered. One piece she hadn't thought about. Sarah, she said, barely able to whisper the name. You were using her too, weren't you? Jake's eyes flickered, and for a moment, there was a crack in his facade, a brief glimpse of something real behind the mask. Sarah was never supposed to get involved. But once she did, it was already too late. She was just another piece to move. Like you. The truth was crushing, suffocating. Emily had been nothing more than a pawn in a game she hadn't even known she was playing. But now, the final pieces of the puzzle were falling into place. And as the weight of that truth settled over her, she realized one thing above all else: this was bigger than Jake. Bigger than Sarah. Bigger than anything she had imagined. The air shifted. There was a sound in the distance, footsteps approaching fast, voices growing louder. Jake's expression hardened, and the men behind him tensed. The door that had once felt like her escape route was now the final barrier between her and the chaos that was about to consume her. And then, before she could even think, the last unexpected twist hit. A figure stepped into the warehouse, moving so quickly that Emily almost didn't see it at first. It was Sarah. But she wasn't alone. She had someone with her, someone who Emily didn't recognize at first. And then, as the figure stepped forward, the truth hit her like a freight train. It was the last person she ever expected. The person who had been hiding in plain sight. The person who had been orchestrating everything all along. Her own mother. The realization dropped like a bombshell. All the lies, all the manipulation, everything had been leading to this moment. Emily was in the center of a conspiracy that reached further than anyone could have imagined, and her mother, the one person she had trusted her entire life, had been the mastermind behind it all. The final piece had fallen into place. But in the end, Emily realized, the truth was more dangerous than she could ever have anticipated. The room was silent except for the quiet hum of the overhead lights, the air thick with a tension that felt like it would never fully dissipate. Emily stood frozen, her mind racing as her mother's face, once a comforting presence in her life, now seemed like a stranger's mask. Her mother had been the last person she'd ever suspected, the one person she thought she could always trust. But now, standing in front of her, her mother was the embodiment of everything Emily had been fighting against. Every question she had, every piece of the puzzle she'd spent months trying to put together, had been answered in the most unexpected, heart-shattering way. I didn't want this for you, Emily, her mother said, her voice soft, almost apologetic, but there was a coldness in her eyes that made Emily's blood run cold. You were never supposed to be caught up in this. But it was too late once you started digging. Once you figured out too much. Emily's mind spun as she processed the words, her breath shallow. How could you? The betrayal was so deep, so complete, that she wasn't sure she could ever recover from it. The woman who had raised her, who had been there through every important moment of her life, had been the puppet master behind the shadows. The twisted web of lies, the manipulation, the people who had been hurt along the way, it all led back to this moment. And there was no going back. Her mother took a slow, deliberate step forward, as if trying to close the distance between them, but Emily couldn't move. It wasn't supposed to go this far. I didn't want to lose you, but you became too involved. You started asking the wrong questions. You started looking at things that shouldn't be looked at. And in the process, you became a target. Not just for them, but for me, too. Emily's heart was pounding in her chest, the weight of the truth nearly crushing her. She felt as if the ground was shifting beneath her, the world she knew crumbling away. All those years, all those moments of trust, had been lies, carefully constructed to keep her in the dark. I don't even know who you are anymore, Emily whispered, the words tasting like ash in her mouth. Her mother's face softened for a moment, a flicker of something Emily couldn't quite place crossing her features, but it was gone almost as quickly as it appeared. I did it all for us, Emily, she said, her voice filled with a mix of regret and justification. For the future. For you. For everything I've worked for. It wasn't about hurting people, it was about protecting us. You just never saw the bigger picture. The bigger picture. The words hung in the air like an accusation, like Emily had missed some grand, unspoken plan. But she could no longer see her mother's actions in any kind of rational light. She could only see the betrayal, the destruction, the lives shattered by the lies. All for what? Power. Control. A future Emily didn't want. I never asked for this, Emily said, her voice trembling with emotion. I never wanted any of this. And you could have told me. You could have stopped this before it got this far. But you didn't. Her mother sighed, shaking her head slightly, as if trying to find the right words. I know you didn't ask for it. But sometimes, Emily, you have to protect the people you love, even if they don't understand it. Even if they never forgive you for it. I thought I could shield you from the truth. But now, she trailed off, a look of sorrow crossing her face. Now, it's too late. You're already too far in. The silence between them was suffocating, and for a long moment, neither spoke. Emily's heart felt as though it had shattered, and the realization hit her all at once. Her mother's plan had never been about love or protection. It was about control. She had manipulated everything, everyone, for a vision of the future that didn't include Emily. She had played her like a pawn in a game she didn't even know she was part of. And now, in this dark, empty warehouse, the truth was laid bare. But knowing the truth didn't make anything easier. It only made the hurt deeper, the betrayal sharper. But in the midst of all the chaos, something unexpected happened. Emily looked up at her mother, her eyes now steady, even as her insides twisted with anger. I can't let you get away with this, Emily said, her voice firm, unshaken. You've ruined so many lives, including my own. And I can't walk away from this, not after everything. You've taken too much from me. Her mother's gaze hardened, but Emily could see the flicker of fear behind her eyes. She had underestimated Emily. The girl who had once trusted her with everything was no longer the same. And maybe, just maybe, that was the final piece of the puzzle. Emily was no longer part of her mother's plan. She was no longer just a pawn. I won't stop, Emily said, her voice resolute, her body brimming with a strength she hadn't known she had until that moment. I'm going to make sure the world knows what you've done. I'll make sure the truth comes out, no matter what it takes. Her mother's lips curled into a sad smile. You're too late, Emily. You've already seen too much. There's nothing left for you here. You should have walked away. But Emily stood her ground, feeling a sense of clarity she hadn't felt before. No. This ends now. In that moment, she understood. The truth wasn't something that could be buried or hidden. It would find a way out. And no matter how much her mother tried to control it, no matter how many strings she pulled, Emily would make sure the world knew the truth. She would no longer be her mother's puppet. The game was over. But just as Emily turned to leave, the door to the warehouse slammed shut, and the unmistakable sound of approaching footsteps filled the room. Emily froze. She knew she couldn't escape, not without facing whatever was coming next. But she wasn't alone this time. Behind her, Sarah stepped into the dim light, her expression hard, eyes filled with determination. "I'm with you," she said quietly, her voice unwavering. And in that moment, Emily realized something. The fight wasn't over. There were still battles to be won, but now, she wasn't fighting alone. The road ahead would be dangerous, it would be unpredictable, but it was hers to walk. And with every step, she knew the truth would keep pushing forward, no matter the cost. As the camera pulled back, the sounds of the city outside rushing in through the cracks, Emily and Sarah stood together, staring into the unknown. What lay ahead was uncertain, the dangers still very much alive, but one thing was clear: the truth had been set free. And it would never be silenced again. But as the screen faded to black, one final message appeared on the screen: the truth always comes at a price. And with that, the story ended. But the questions, the lingering mysteries, would echo long after the video had finished. What had Emily truly uncovered? Who else was out there, watching, waiting? Would the truth really set her free, or would it be the catalyst for something far darker? The answer, it seemed, was yet to be written.